Greetings, comrades, and welcome to the Eastern Border. Now, we're back with the news here about the war and everything, and I wanted to spend more time talking about the Alaska stuff, but, well, the meeting with Putin and Donald Trump ended predictably with, nothing. More precisely, nothing concrete. The parties agreed to negotiate further, and the war, just continued. But that's if we talk about the essence. Probably some progress in relations has been outlined. Perhaps there are some unpublished agreements, and it's possible that the world has become a little closer, but this is still just broad speculation. It's obvious that Trump was not happy with the meeting, despite his statements to the contrary. In the conversation with Putin, it had really gone 10 out of 10, as the president said on Fox News, that at least they would not have cancelled lunch. And the meeting would have lasted longer. And at the final press conference, journalists would probably actually been allowed to, ask basic questions. But the situation with Putin, is quite different. He flew to Anchorage in an emphatically good mood and flew away shining like a brand new coin. The Kremlin press service proudly published a video of American fighters escorting the Russian president's plane, and obviously even more happiness came when the soldiers were crawling with everything, that stuff, and the whole red carpet. And a significant part of the Z community perceived the results of the summit in approximately the same way, as an absolute triumph of the darkest, who this time really outplayed everyone. But that really didn't last long, because again, this whole meeting was quite meaningless. So, we don't really have much to talk about over there, because, I could make fun of all this mess, but, I've been actually busy doing real-life stuff in a bit of a, vacation that involves moving, because we're now going to the Latvian countryside, and we're going to be about, we're going to go to the same place where the Eastern Border started, where we got a little house in the countryside with my wife, and it's nothing expensive because it's like 24 kilometers from the Russian border, so it was really, really, really cheap, and I mean, extremely, for the deal that we got, and that needs moving, and, I'll be back 5 kilometers from where the show even started, so there's going to be a lot of difficulties here, which I've been doing most of the August, which is why, a bit less episodes, and this one, again, slightly different than we're used to lately. However, first, I'd like to say that I joined the Autumn Harvest donation program. We're collecting stuff for Revenge Tactical Group, which works under the Defense Intelligence of Ukraine, who are operating in the Donetsk region. And they've written and recorded a short video on YouTube about how, a message to you guys who listen to the show, and, it's really nice, and we're trying to help them. The goal for us, because this is the first time I'm doing this, and the goal is to reach 5,500 euros, and currently we're at 2,100 euros. So please, if you can, again, all the links in the show description, please help out here, because we really want to, achieve our goal. And apparently, we're sourcing an armored Jeep, one half of it, because the total cost is 11,000, and all vehicles are, built around 2010, 2012 or newer, mainly Toyota Hilux or Mitsubishi L200, with low mileage and fully serviced. These are some of the greatest and the most reliable pickups possible to be on the front line of Ukraine. So, please help us out and watch the message, and that's going to be really great of you. Do it for, my past birthday, and a special thank you to everyone who greeted me on Facebook. That was really nice. And before we get to the Vatnik tears part, because we kind of have to, I was asked to not stop doing those, there's a little bit of thing that I want to talk about, which is a bit more scripted again, as I want to do more, from the effects of what actually happened with these Vatniks being so happy about this whole, Alaska situation. Because, the topic of the hour here is the digital sewage flooding the whole data stream, the little code golems shot out from the Kremlin's blackened soul. You call them bots, I call them what they really are, cyberspace tapeworms burrowing into the soft tissue of your mind, laying eggs of pure, unadulterated bullshit. And like any good plague, they come in, two main flavors of poison. Number one are the dumb brutes, the flag-waving zombies. This is the blunt instrument. The sledgehammer approach for the mouth breathers. Their mission is simple: to create a digital mob of screaming morons so you feel like the lone sane person in a planet-sized asylum. I want you to think, gods, am I the only one? Maybe they're right. It's easy to spot these degenerates. They drape themselves in the digital flag, smelling of stale patriotism and, very cheap vodka. Profile pic is some stony-faced soldier from a war their grandparents fought, maybe their victory banner looking all heroic. They spew a constant stream of victory mania, celebrating parades and tanks and flexing muscles they really don't have. That entire persona is a caricature of the salt of the earth, the simple, honest peasant, which means their posts are written with typos, they talk about their goddamn vegetable gardens and fishing trips, and they adopt the voice of some folksy, world-weary babushka who's seen it all. Here I stand, a simple Russian woman. Bullshit! You're a 20-year-old script kiddie in a windowless room in St. Petersburg, and the only thing you've ever survived is a Cheeto overdose. It's crude, it's obvious, and, works on the weak-minded. Now the flavor, too, are the smart vipers, the poisonous whisperers. Now we get to the real filth. The insidious ones. These aren't the sledgehammers, they're the scalpels. Their job isn't to cheer for Russia, their job is to make you give up on Ukraine. And not help out donations like mine, which I'm doing here. They drop yourselves in your flag, claim your cities as home, and bleed all over the screen about how much they love their country. They're the masters of the truth sandwich. They'll feed you 9 slices of verifiable, hard-to-swallow truth. In the middle, they'll slip one thin, razor-sharp slice of weaponized despair. A 10% cyanide chaser that paralyzes your will, rots your hope, and makes you want to lie down in a ditch and wait for the end. They're not screaming glory to Russia. They're the ones disguised as a disappointed patriot, and they sing a few key hymns from their poison prayer book. And here are some nice little examples. They're all fucking you over. Every instance of corruption, real or imagined, is magnified into an apocalyptic betrayal. You're donating your last hryvnia, especially to the Ukrainians inside that country, or euros for us. Well, they're driving gold-plated cars. And they're also screaming, in Ukrainian sometimes even, they're sending boys to die with meat grinders. Zelensky sold us out. They pick at the scabs of frustration until you're bleeding pure cynicism. Also, they state that everyone's abandoned Ukraine. Every delayed weapons shipment is apparently the final nail in the coffin. Every cautious quote from some Western politician is the proof that, well, West is just using Ukraine as a meat shield. See, when they won't give Ukraine the big missiles. You're just a pawn in America's game. It's all just a non-stop campaign to make, well, everyone who supports this war feel utterly, hopelessly alone on a cold, dark planet. And then they hate the one who ran. They turn people against each other. Those who stayed in Ukraine against those who escaped. And I've seen a lot of complaints there. Oh, while some people are dodging rockets, they're sipping lattes in Vienna. Traitors, they should come back and fight. They just want Ukrainians to beat each other's throats because a nation fighting itself can't really fight an invader. Then there's one that's just screaming that, oh, Ukraine is all gonna die, it's all hopeless. They scream about Ukrainian losses and whisper about Russian ones. They paint a picture of an endless grinding war where the enemy has infinite bodies to throw into the fire. Russia will never run out of men. I do have to ask, well, what men? But we'll get to that later. And what did all these soldiers die for? They want you guys who support Ukraine to believe that every sacrifice of Ukrainian men is pointless, that resistance is just a slower form of suicide. And then there are those who claim that it's all a rigged game, and that, everyone who takes a position here is a mouth-breathing pawn. Weird stuff. That's the ultimate nihilism, the idea that this all is some sort of a show, a deal cooked up by the oligarchs, and that the soldiers in the front lines of Ukrainian side are just the screaming, dying extra, that nothing they do matters because the script was written long ago. And you know what? I've heard some people starting to believe it. I hear the whispers, I hear the doubt, I've seen some well-paid media whores and analysts get a fat paycheck from Moscow last year to push this exact line of crap. To tell you Russia is an invincible juggernaut and Ukraine is a corpse that just doesn't know it's dead yet. And some say that Ukraine didn't show up for the war. And here I have to answer, are you fucking kidding me? Tell that to the ghost of the Black Sea Fleet, now serving as luxury condos for crabs at the bottom of the sea. Tell that to the multi-million-dollar Russian Air Force getting strategic bombers turned to scrap metal hundreds of kilometers from the front. Tell that to the smoldering ruins of their ammo dumps and oil refineries, paralyzed by drones built from scrap parts in pure righteous fury. The country, which supposedly didn't show up, has been grinding a so-called superpower to a bloody halt for years. An army that was supposed to be in Paris by now can't even secure a city 30 kilometers from its own border. They created the drone army from nothing. They built up their goddamn cruise missiles and they withstood on their own in the early war. And, well, I hadn't done this for a while this month because of various reasons, but, there were plenty of reasons to do so and plenty of requests too. So here's the deluxe edition of Vatnik Tears, just to show you what they're up against, what these people are up against and what's happening there, which is why I'm doing this, which is why it's so important. Now, I'm not doing these as often as in the past because I want to focus on more subtle episodes and something that is more timeless here, but I can't, stand aside while this is happening. We have to dedicate some attention to this whole mess, after all, because otherwise, all these people who post these vankering posts about how everything's horrible and how this stuff is pointless. Well, listen up here, scumbags. I'm talking the truth here, and I'm all out of good booze to drink currently because I haven't been able to. And my sleep's actually a bit better now, but no thanks to you. That's why I kind of need the countryside to get up the nightmares. Because, oh boy, nightmares and PTSD really are not fun. So, let's grind our gears and get right into it. Because for this episode, we have a truly deluxe edition of pure Vatnik tears and something to shut those assholes up when they're starting to go all doom and gloom once again. First of all, we of course have to talk about the ongoing effective strikes by Ukrainian drones on Russian oil refineries. Z authors had a field day crying about this. Here is what still living in Canada, Alex Parker Returns, have to say about this, which gives a nice little combo about all the situation here and what's actually going on and how the gasoline prices are increasing. Oh, we'll see some deficits here as well, of course. The Novoshakhtinsk oil refinery, the largest in southern Russia, has been completely destroyed. In an attempt to extinguish the fire, firefighters used up all the fresh water in the nearest reservoirs. Water is being delivered and distributed to the local residents. Ukrainians also attacked the largest seaport in the Baltic Sea, through which oil is supplied via the well-known Shadow Fleet. Again, it was claimed that everything was shut down and the detonation was caused only by drone debris. The videos say otherwise. Thus, our wise politician is unable to protect even his wallet in the form of petrodollars. It's a disgrace. Now, of course, he doesn't name Putin because, well, they're too cowardly to do this, which is just, hilarious because they're, of course, way more manly and truly in hardcore warrior spirit than everyone else. Now, in the next episode, we're going to be looking with, my buddy Rob, who helps me out with the YouTube channel by editing videos and everything, to what a guest of Maxim Kalashnikov had to say, because there was an episode of his, Yurievich, by the way, one of the buddies of Igor Girkin as well, and that really drove me insane almost. It was just painful to even go through. It was about how mission of Russia is to physically destroy all the evil Satanists, which includes every Catholic and Protestant on the planet as well. A huge painful mess, but we'll get to that next time, which is why I also had a bit of issues to working with this one, because this was supposed to be about that too, but, well, like you heard, that I got a bit angry. Then we have Starszy Ed, or senior than the Ed, and here it's the following. The problem in fighting enemy drones that strike our targets hundreds and hundreds of kilometers away from the zone of battle contact is not the complexity of the target. The drone flies low, flies slowly, and there are few of them. You could probably shoot down a drone even with a Girkin pistol. I'm exaggerating, of course, but not by much. The problem lies in the organization, or more precisely, in organizational decisions. Detect, track, advance, MOG, air defense, installation, strike. If this issue concerns the ground, that is the frontline zone, then it is resolved often quickly, but apparently the further into the depths of Russia, the more there are various kinds of bosses, and each of them thinks, well, just in case something happens. And he also adds that it is reported that debris fell in the port of Ust-Luga, causing a fire. I watched the video as usual, a slow, low-flying, unmaneuverable, loud, single target. Why it was shut down so successfully that the debris caused fire, well, that he does not know. Now that's his literal statement out over there, because he does know. He just won't say it openly, because then he'd have to admit that Russia actually does make mistakes. And we can't have that, since, well, as I always have stated, especially lately when I formulated it in my own mind carefully, yeah, this whole Russianness and this whole empire building stuff, that's a religion. Not a standard, nation state, to be honest. And then we have Evit, this favorite Vatnik philologist in ambush, who's a good friend of Maxim Kalashnikov, and he put another spin on this whole situation, writing, quote, a few days ago, Konstantin Mashovets wrote, and he quotes, no one needs to explain the direct link between strikes on oil refineries, fuel trains, transport hubs, especially railways, and the ability of Russian troops to carry out operational and strategic maneuvers with forces and resources as part of the operational deployment of their strike groups in certain operational directions. Someone at the main directorate of the General Staff of the Armed Forces of Ukraine has very creatively calculated the vulnerability of key points of the Russian infrastructure in this regard. One could perhaps argue about the particular creativity of this calculation, since the vulnerability in question was identified by the enemy in a simple manner through scientific and practical trial and error. Well, but everything else is logical. Prioritizing key infrastructure points as targets for destruction in the deep rear is an obvious decision, which we really haven't done. And obviously, this has actually led to tangible effects. And I want to poke this out because, well, I know that my friends at the Shills will be very happy by the following quote here, because this is what this actually leads to, direct effects. Usually Front writes, the enemy has been striking our oil refineries on a daily basis for quite some time now. These strikes are systemic in nature. The enemy's drones are equipped with tactical debris, which hits our oil refineries with enviable regularity. Already in Crimea, 95th gasoline, well, that is the octane number, 95, and it's a bit different between US and EU and the rest of the world, as always. I think you should, in US, 90, what we in Europe have 95, I think it would be 88 or something. Approximately that. As far as I know, I was told this by my listeners on Discord, so not very well informed here. But carrying on. And this is a fact. As the Crimeans, if the enemy, that is the Ukrainians, continues to strike in the same manner for 6 months to a year, the gasoline will most likely become available only by coupons everywhere. And this is a very tangible situation, especially since currently, as of today, as I'm recording this on the 31st of August, well, indeed, Russia's economy has been basically declared to be, well, in a stagnation, which is just amazing. Secondly, the other hero of the day of the Z channels is Defense Minister Belousov, who it turns out lies as he breathes. Sladkov Plus channel noted, Russian Defense Minister, medical care for military personnel. We have placed the main emphasis on the tactical level. Taking into account the specifics of conducting special military operations, the personnel of the troop formations are provided with modern first aid kits. 100%. In addition, the units are being re-equipped with new means of evacuation, including robotic ones, and those with protection against enemy drones. Now, this obviously is a massive amount of flying, and, pretty horrible situation right there, which is admitted even by such a concrete author as The World Today by Yuri Podolyaka. Yuri Podolyaka being a Ukrainian traitor who actually joined the Russian side, and I hope that he, dies a horrible and very painful death. This guy I have, no love for. And even Maxim Kalashnikov, I just want to see Maxim Kalashnikov cry and go to a prison. Yuri Podolyaka, yeah, no one likes traitors. And he writes, quote, "Hooray, let's disperse. There are not just a lot of standard first aid kits in the army, but 100% of the military are equipped with them. That's cool. That's what we wanted. To help until the state supply machine was fully operational. It's nice to know that it's working. Now, I and other volunteers can go and live a normal life, not the volunteer one. And what about the 166 requests for first aid kits from various units that are currently pending in our bot? The earliest ones are from August the 3rd. Well, the military has messed something up. Probably 100% is not enough for them. They want more." And also, another comment about this from a channel called Doctors You're Not Alone. "Comrades, heads of medical units and branches of the armed forces, for what purpose did each of you report to the minister about the total provision of first aid kits? After all, that's the only way to get 100%, right? Who else but you, the medics, knows that you can only fight disease by making the right diagnosis? And when, instead of making a diagnosis and then treating the situation, you each brag about 100% in your reports, do I need to explain the price you'll pay for showing off to your bosses?" And, that's the whole idea. This mess is just getting scarier. And then we have another comment, because it turns out that it's not just the defense minister who's lying. The chief of the general staff is also exaggerating the successes, and this also comes from Yuri Podolyaka here. Quote, "It seems to me that someone has really set up the chief of the general staff, Gerasimov." Always someone's being set up here, and no one's really guilty on their own. "I listened to the chief of general staff, Gerasimov, and tried to understand who's setting him up so clumsily and why. The formations and military units of the Western Military District have almost completely blocked the city of Kupiansk and liberated about half its territory." And, of course, that's not true. They also are claiming that they have conquered half of Pokrovsk, which is also ridiculously as far from the truth as humanly possible. But Podolyaka comments, "After all, this is reported to the Supreme Commander, and this is, to put it mildly, a very huge exaggeration of our successes on this section of the front." So this is just another little day of another fighting in credit, because everyone's donated everything, and, the Russian army's gloriously advancing, which is why Putin really believes that he's actually winning. And, this reminds me of something. This means that, if you remember this Schrödinger, who in his thought experiment, had a cat that you couldn't say for sure whether it existed or not, or was dead or not, or something. And something similar really exists today in the Russian army. Because, up to Putin, it's reported that everything is there, everything's fine. But without humanitarian aid, well, nothing can be achieved there. It's just amazing. And I have a glorious quote from the two majors here, which is just amazing here. It's just glorious. They here complain about one of the commanders here on the front lines there. Quote, "Comrades, superior commanders, how you have annoyed us in the 4th year of the war. We're constantly being reprimanded because of you on a regular basis. Explain to me, a simple humanitarian worker who brings you compasses, machine gun belts, nets, provisions, ATVs, cars, drones, retractable ladders, and 50 other items of great importance, both statutory or non-statutory. Why you are forbidden to accept the help? What is shameful about it? The army has everything. Even the generals know that it doesn't have everything. Even the Supreme Commander notes that the volunteers are doing a great job and that they exist at the front. Why do we, regularly, even in the middle of the night, receive calls from soldiers saying, urgently remove the regiment brigade number from the post? The command called. We're screwed. What secret are we giving away when we publish combat vehicles in the rear with our people's newly installed armor, naming the unit? Are you ashamed to admit that the people put armor on your vehicles? Can't the generals find out that a particular regiment doesn't have enough drones or transport? They are not enough because they are consumables." That is, the two majors. And let me just point here again about our collection for the Ukrainian army this time. Those guys, unlike these Russian assholes, are not fascists and are actually, very much honest and open about them getting help, and everything's accounted for on the donation page, which you hopefully will click, and down below in the doobly-doo. I have now learned to say this and I hate myself for it. Well, over there, you can also, read the reports on how people are doing, where the money's being spent, and you have full accountability. Which is something, another nice little luxury, that, Russia apparently doesn't really have. And besides this, let's get back to the Russian oil refineries, because this is just so hilarious that I want to bring this up more and more, to be honest. Here's a glorious quote for you. "Do you know what it looks like from the outside? We've been half dead here for months, digging trenches, counting bullets every day under the drones, while back home, whole refineries are burning down one after another. Novoshakhtinsk is completely burned down. Ust-Luga has also been hit very hard, and every time it's the same old story. Shut down by debris." I find this extremely hilarious. What debris? Are you completely out of your minds? These farts, as the high command aptly puts it, fly slowly low and make a loud racket. You can even take them down with a automatic weapon if you have the brain. But no, we have a system. And while all these reports are coming in, the enemy is already attacking the next target. There are a lot of bosses, but what's the fucking point? The funniest thing, we're fighting here and the country can't even protect its factories. Seriously, what's the point of all of this? That is just such chaos in the rear. We're washing ourselves with blood here. The result is nothing. Whole refineries are burning, there's no fuel, and they're still pushing us to attack. This comes from the channel BPO, Brothers in Arms. And, I hope to hear more and more of this. Another comment was by witnesses of Bayraktar, which is just glorious. "I am watching the skies of Ukrainian slow-moving UAVs on our oil refineries. There are no censored words in my vocabulary to describe the situation. But what strikes me most is that even after dozens of such debris falls, no one has been publicly arrested and sent to prison for complete incompetence in wartime conditions. We have all the means to counter Ukrainian UAVs. However, there is no system and no fear of failure." So one of these guys claims that the system is the main part that fucks everything up, and the other guy says that we literally have no system. So what is it? I would say it's actually both, because this is just stupid, just amazing, and this really shows that Russian oil refineries, they're being damaged now, and with the flamingos incoming, it's gonna get worse. And as their economy is already in an official recession, oh boy, we're seeing a lot of fun that's about to hit all the situation, and it's going to be way more dangerous in the future. Russian engineer adds the final comment about this whole situation. He writes, quote, "First of all, of course, you need the desire to win. Without this, hiding the fact of real hits on energy infrastructure facilities behind debris and explosions, like an ostrich, you can mold a humpbacked owl on a globe, but people see a column of smoke on the horizon, the situation at gas stations, and the very fact that debris flew such a long distance, although in terms of their flight characteristics, these are essentially World War I aircraft. And this denial of reality angers people much more than the offensive failure to strike back at the enemy. That is the fact that their own people are being treated like idiots, which they, frankly speaking, are, but, they're just my addition to this whole affair. Singing the aria that all is well, beautiful Marquise. This leads to a widespread understanding that the issue is not so much technical as it is organizational, and the main problem is the shifting of responsibility, the fear of violating formalities, and the fear of making decisions. But that's not all. I mean, if we look at the first group of these Vatniks who just post to make sure, the Russians are proud and they're going to win this stuff, yeah, that's a bit different from the guys fighting in the army. Like I said, morale over there. That I said, I think, that was on the shells when I was on their show. I was supposed to be there again, but, oh boy, traveling back and forth from literally the other side of Latvia is pretty difficult. And I hope that, well, I'm going to move there permanently, and, you're going to have to come and visit. It's a beautiful place, really. But over here, on the Russian side, texts about the fatigue and reflections on the goals of the war have begun to appear again. The fourth year of their fucking invasion. Amazeballs. Here I want to quote Diary of an Old Recruit, published by Maxim Kalashnikov on his blog regularly. Because, he receives these letters from the front lines and he posts them and puts on some comments on there. And this really shows the whole attitude towards the war currently that the soldiers in the front, the Russian side, actually have. Against the backdrop of the ongoing negotiation process, the following thoughts arise. A certain dichotomy between justice and fatigue, a complex moral and emotional background between the desire to reach a virtuous, victorious end, and the fatigue. I will try to elaborate. The stated goals of the special military operation and the designated territorial claims in the 4 areas with their administrative boundaries, and at the same time reports of a freeze in the conflict along the existing front line. On the one hand, the entire military and military-related community wants to achieve victory, reach the stated goals, liberate the territories, and eradicate the root causes of the conflict. In part, I also want this with all my heart, and there are similar sentiments on the front lines, to move forward, fight, and achieve victory. This is what you will hear in conversations with comrades on the trenches. And this is a legitimate desire. It is the idea for which some ended up on the front lines. On the other hand, there's insane amounts of fatigue. It is especially felt by those who have been fighting since the very beginning. For them, even the option of not freezing the conflict, but ending it by mutual agreement no longer seems so depressing, especially when we remember our retreat from Kherson and how the armed forces of Ukraine were received there. This topic can be discussed at length, but it's pointless. Well, pointless for these idiots over there who are doing all this Vatnik crying, but let's just remember that, not only Russia retreated from around Kiev and were pushed back around Kharkiv, but they also retreated on their own from Kherson. People tend to forget these massive successes that Ukraine has had. But carrying on from this diary of an old recruit. In addition to the fatigue of those fighting, let's not hide the fatigue of the rear. I think those who provide assistance to the front will not let us lie. People are tired too. However, both the front and the rear are held together by determination and willpower. Not really, as you'll see very soon. And we are still capable of a lot with them. Fresh reinforcements would give us new strength, but are the people ready for a second wave? That's also a good question. There will be no conclusion to these deliberations, and perhaps there cannot be. We are simply doing our job in monitoring the situation in the world. It's definitely changing, and in my humble opinion, this is a very interesting historic moment. A razor's edge, so to speak. The result of the whole movement will show whether we will achieve peace, albeit conditional, or a new round of active action. And then Maxim Kalashnikov, comments himself on this whole situation. A seemingly seditious thought came to mind, and that thought is this. It was easier for our grandfathers and the Soviet people than it is for us fighting in this war. And from my part, that's really saying something out there, because, World War II was a horrendous mess, especially in these parts. And it's not a matter of comparing hardships, deprivations, and sacrifices. The Great Patriotic War will forever be a great tragedy for the Russian people. I write that it was easier for our ancestors because they saw the goal to destroy the enemy. And they knew that the enemy had to be crushed in its lair. At that moment, it was in Berlin. And before that, it was Paris. And we, raised on their exploits, were firmly convinced that the enemies must be dealt with decisively and harshly. Oh yeah, when he mentions Paris, he already refers to even further events back there. He talks about Napoleonic era and Alexander III and all this stuff. I think I should get into the very older history of Russia at some point as well. But carrying on. And we, raised on their exploits, were firmly convinced that enemies must be dealt with decisively and harshly. And what are we fighting for now? What victory do we want to achieve? Some people are fighting to avenge their fallen comrades. Some say they came to fight for money. Maybe that was their original intention. But when people like that are confronted with real war, they realize that money loses its meaning. And what is the meaning of this war? We don't know. I don't know. And that That is why it's hard on the soul, and that's how we fight. Now, let me remind you that, Ukrainians do know what they're fighting for the very survival of their culture, language, and country, which is why, well, they don't have such horrible issues. And remember, what the guy said about how the willingness of the rear to support us is going to be great and everything's going to be smooth once again. Not exactly, scumbag. Not exactly at all. See, the military author of the channel, callsign Ossetin, he literally cries out from the depths of his heart. He's very sad, and he writes like 2 articles. In the first one, he cannot understand, this passionable patriot, cannot understand why in the 4th year of the war, this honorable crusade that they're having, right? The Ministry of Defense of Russia is ignoring the needs of soldiers fighting on the front lines. It really is a massive mystery to him. Quote, it is very interesting why the Ministry of Defense can't secure contracts to purchase Matrix 4T drones, which are very useful for reconnaissance and other purposes. I don't understand why the guys have to either buy these drones themselves for hundreds of thousands of rubles or collect money via telegram. Just deliver 1,000 of these drones to the Zaporizhia region. God damn it. Tell the guys to be a little more careful, and that's it. It'll be 500 times easier for our heroes to fight, especially at night. We have a new branch of the military, but so far, the Russians also made this drone branch, but not very successful. So, But so far there aren't more drones, and there hasn't been any distribution of such, even though quite a bit of time has passed. Oh, I wonder why. Could it maybe be, gasp, corruption? No, man. Like, this is just hilarious at this point. But getting on from this whole side also, because this is really one of the times where they're crying, and this is a true passionate patriot of Russian imperialism doing his best. Do we not have money in the Ministry of Defense or the whole state? Well, yeah, obviously they don't, but not like he's going to admit this. I don't believe that. Of course we do. It's just that no one in the Moscow offices knows the real situation at the front. Well, they really report the wrong situation at the front deliberately. So what did you expect, dude? When people see on the news that they took that checkpoint, they took 3 more checkpoints, and now even like half of Pokrovsk and everything is also taken, which is just my addition here again, but it's just so tasteful, so pretty, so I would say sublime and exquisite. Like I said, truly a special edition of very, very kind of deluxe Vatnik tears. I think you really, guys, deserve the best. After all, I am a glorious supreme leader of the eastern border, so here we go. They don't delve into the details because they don't need them, or they don't want to understand the whole situation. Can you explain to me, a simple man, what the problem is? These matrices, Mavics and Huyaviks, are sold by... Huyavik is a wordplay because it combines the word Hui, which is basically a dick, with the word Mavic, so, that's how it operates, are sold by the thousands on the internet, and in China they are made by the hundreds of thousands. Why is that? I understand that there are no perfect wars, that things don't always go according to the plan, and the army doesn't always have everything it needs. But when you've been at the war for 4 years, and the whole nation is tired of it, not to mention the soldiers who have been in hotspots for several years, it's time to think about how to win with this damn war with the Ukrainians. And here once again he adds the whole situation which I have been yelling at all of you guys since the beginning of the war. Because, well, he states pretty much the obvious, quote, history in Russia shows that protracted wars, especially those that are not won, can cost the state dearly. I understand that these posts are not going anywhere, and no one is going to decide in 5 minutes to supply the army with drones. I'm just asking myself, why is this the case? The situation in the front lines is 1,000 times worse for the Ukrainians. A blatant lie, but he had to add this in, otherwise he, had to meet a window pretty soon, I figure, or just, join the other Z bloggers in prison. As you know, they have been adding up over there lately. But that doesn't mean we should relax and do nothing new and not think about how we can fight better. The whole issue boils down to fucking money. Ah, yes. Nice little money. Almost no one is helping the front with billions, even though those billions would save thousands of lives and allow us to move forward with relief. Well, because no one cares, but he finalizes this. I don't have answers to the questions of why the people or the military themselves should do this through a common fund, so I'm asking them along with you. No one will ever give answers to these questions. But then, a few days later, by the way, he complained, and I haven't really, posted this month. Again, I collected all this methodology over here, because, at least one episode needs to be dedicated to this mess. But the complaints from Z authors about the decline in donations from the common people for the needs of the front are still coming in on a daily basis. And here we have another passionate cry for help a few days after this previous post from the same channel, callsign Osetin, who was turned into the biggest wanker out there, for which I just have to applaud him slowly, like, молодец, парень, молодец, работать дальше. Because, it's just better for me and for you guys as well. And he writes the following, which shows truly the willpower of the people who support the Russian side here. Quote, Friends, I understand that everyone is tired of these constant collections on all channels. Many people help and give a lot to support the army, but now your help is very important. I'm not even talking about my channel. We don't have huge collections, and we don't collect for very serious things for the guys, but try to help other large channels with their collections. Right now, people are tired of reading these news, and channel views have dropped several times over. You don't have to look far. Even on this channel, they've decreased threefold. Our army is currently conducting active offensives on all fronts. Well, not so active as, you would think, but still. You simply cannot imagine how difficult it is for our men on the front lines right now. Even the fact that residents are being liberated every week comes at the cost of many, many lives. And here you can save these lives through volunteers, large channels and more. I ask you, I beg of you, to help the army in any way you can at this critical moment on the front lines. Even if it's just on my channel, just help where you can. Your help is very much needed by the men, and they're grateful for it. One bandage can save a life, not to mention drones, cars, and so on. Don't forget that there's a war going on, and heroes are giving their lives in the front lines. Everyone is tired. Everyone is waiting for peace. But the lives of our soldiers continue to be lost, so we need to help in any way we can. Questions such as why ministers and deputies and rich businessmen are not helping at all, why the people have to collect money at all. Please don't ask me such things. But you should be asked. Believe me, I have all these questions too. But we will, again, finishes this whole mess the same way, but we will never hear the answers to them. Well, not at least yet. As again, this guy really believes that he's gonna get some fantastic answer to all this mess, which is obviously never coming, at least not while Putin is in power. From all of this situation here, you can clearly see that all these people who anchored that Ukraine is totally lost and that Russians are just marching in. Well, they're marching in on their official reports, their official maps, which is just so dumb and ridiculous that it's just so silly. Like, there is no point of this. This is what the actual guys in the front lines are complaining about. These guys who are all now being, oppressed massively by Putin's forces because they make the army look bad. Well, yeah, these guys know better. So if everyone just yet again posts something glorious about the Russian army or how Ukrainian army is just lost and doomed, yeah, take them to this episode. It's going to be great. And you guys should remember to actually help out the Ukrainian side because these guys really need the help. I'm going to be poking you at this until we get the goal done. I'll be throwing in my advertisement income too, because I have bills to pay as well, but all of my ad income from this episode and others will go straight to this donation thing until we reach our goal, and then we'll figure out some other ways how to help the Ukrainian army once more. So please go to the link down below. Again, I'm going to be repeating this every episode until we reach our goal, and, well, let's hope that this whole stuff works out. And finally, there's something that I just have to add into these episodes because otherwise I just can't. It feels like some sort of part of my whole existence will get lost if I don't. Because finally, at the end of this episode here, I would like to give you a little message from the, as they're called here, places not so distant, which is a nice term for a prison colony. See, Igor Girkin, our good old buddy Igor Girkin, I just have to put him in. He sums up the whole disappointing results of this entire summer campaign for the Russian army here, as published on his wife's Telegram channel by Miroslava Reginskaya. She didn't even take his surname or anything, and, well, she just looks up very weird. And she's now finally added Freedom to Strelkov on her channel, but, we find this funny. This is just amazing because here we go. Igor Girkin on easing travel restrictions in Ukraine for men of draft age. Because now Ukraine is allowing men from the age of 18 to 22 to also leave the country. So that's a great news because, well, in the Russian mainstream media, like in Solovyov and everywhere else, well, they're laughing about this and calling them stupid, but here's what Girkin has to say. Quote, For some reason, everyone here looks for some kind of PR stunt in the enemy's actions and refuses to believe that the enemy is acting rationally. We still haven't unlearned how to throw hats at the enemy, laugh at Iskanders, and say that if we want to, if we try hard enough, we'll be in Kiev and defeat everyone. The situation is completely different. The enemy is smart, cunning, devious, cruel, decisive, and steadfast. And in 3.5 years of war, some propagandists, to put it mildly, have failed to appreciate and understand this. Apparently, they keep telling the same story that we're about to win, literally tomorrow or the day after tomorrow. Nothing of the sort. We will not win without very serious efforts tomorrow, the day after tomorrow, or the day after that, and there will be no compromise. The war will continue. The explanation is actually very simple. Yes, undoubtedly this is PR. Yes, undoubtedly someone in Ukraine is trying to score political points this way. However, we need to look at the situation from a completely different angle. The enemy has no need to call up this age group, tighten the travel restrictions, or even maintain the travel restrictions that were in place before. We were unable to break through the front anywhere over the summer. We were unable to do anything over the summer except finally drive the enemy out of Chasiv Yar, with which we had been storming for 16 months. 16 months, and at what cost? A town that had a population of 20,000 before this, and now what? Now maybe 500 people at best. So why does the enemy need more people if it can manage the forces with what it has? Yes, perhaps the enemy will lose a certain number of potential soldiers, but now, specifically, it turns out that it doesn't even need them. It's a disgrace. It's a slap in the face to our wonderful, brilliant politicians, military leaders, and other geostrategists. I look at it from this point of view. If the enemy were really on the verge of destruction and defeat, Ukrainians would grab 16-year-olds, as they say, Volkssturmists, send them into the battle, and unfortunately, they would be found, and in large numbers. And he doesn't even need to call up the 22-year-olds. That's a great achievement. Let's continue to say, this clown, this fool, Zelensky. He's not a fool at all. If, excuse me, he's a fool, then I want to ask, what kind of geniuses are these assholes on our side who cannot win this war in 3.5 years with this fool in command of the other one? That is all. And I think that this Girkin's text sums up everything really nicely. I hope that you enjoyed this episode of Vatnik Tears, because, well, for one, it's a great answer to all those complete douchebags on the front line, like on the front lines of the informational warfare, in which me, myself, and others are fighting, that continue to just, post shitty comments on various review sites and everything, and just on social media wanking about some sort of great Russian army. Great my ass. They can't even have their own proper ideology, and if you haven't listened to that episode, do so now. But for now, well, September is coming. A lot of stuff is happening. We're pretty soon moving. I hope to get back to proper work mode soon. And as you can see, well, I'm trying my best, even when it comes to these Vatnik News episodes. I hope that this wasn't too bad for you guys. До свидания, товарищ. And remember, happiness is mandatory, and donate to the autumn harvest.